Today is Yom HaZikaron of Marachot Chalei Yisrael in Nifkei Eva. Whether we want to commemorate it openly or at least we should mention it and mention definitely our appreciation for all those who have sacrificed themselves for us. No matter what your personal beliefs are, certainly these men and women sacrificed their lives to save others. One of those soldiers' name was Omer Shachar. Omer Shachar was died. He was actually engaged, and he died with no children. And his parents, after he was nifter, which is called postmortem or posthumous, there's in our days you were able to extract the sperm, freeze it, or either use it right away, and impregnate a woman. After he died.
Donated before?
He didn't donate it. He just died tragically in the middle of it was actually died in an accident. But he died. No, after he's a cadaver, it is possible to take out the sperm and impregnate. Then it was a question of his fiance. Is that mutter or not? Is that something that Chazal would sanction and say, that's a great idea?
The taking or the impregnating?
Everything. The whole process.
A few questions.
The whole process. Now, the doctor knows this question is actually, I could say, could be divided up into 15 questions, and each one of those questions could be a shear on its own. Each one could be a shear on its own of over an hour each. So let's just start with the very basics. We all know there's something called organ donations. That we know. Let's start with the heart, the liver, the lungs, the kidney, not so.
Brain.
Those three, the only way that in our days that you're able to do a transplant is only if the donor is not totally dead, he's only brain dead. Brain dead means basically your brain is not working and you are not breathing on your own. But your heart does beat on its own. I mean, obviously it has to supply with oxygen, like all of us need oxygen, but in principle, when the brain is dead, the heart still beats on its own. So that was the question. Someone is brain dead, someone's, to make life easier, there's a guy right next to him who needs a heart. So it's a pekuach nefesh. And if we could get the heart from A to B, B would be safe. There's only one question. You can't kill A in order to save B. Yeah. So is brain dead considered dead? This is a major machlokes. And there's a major machlokes. Most poskim say brain dead is not considered dead, and you are not allowed to take out a heart from a dead person in order to put it into a live person. The Israeli rabbinit paskin, it is considered dead. Right? So they would say you could, yes, fully terminate the brain dead person's life in order to take out the heart. And we are not going to discuss the shiloh today. This is based on Gemaras, Lashonis, and Rashi. But in a nutshell, the question is, if you are not spontaneous, you don't breathe anymore, you cannot breathe anymore, but your heart will still beat on its own, are you considered dead or not? That is the question. That's question number one. We're not going to talk about that today. We'll talk about that a different year. What about our question? Our question is we want to impregnate a woman with a dead person's sperm. First of all, we can discuss the moral aspects. The moral aspects. Is it right to bring a baby into the world who will not have a father alive? Is that right or wrong? Right? Is it right to bring a baby into the world out of wedlock? Because even though in principle there was a fiancé situation, but he's dead, so they're not married. The bottom line is the baby's being created not in a state of holy matrimony. Is that right or wrong? Now this is a major league shaila, which is coming very prevalent today. Sadly enough, there are many single women in the Haredi community or any that are not cannot find a shidduch, and their biological clock is ticking, and they want to have children. So they go to a sperm bank. They don't even know who the father is. We're not going to get involved in that, Shiloh. How do you figure out who the father is? Call a sperm bank. Okay, I want to have a baby. Is that allowed or not allowed? A major machloikis. Is that allowed or not allowed? But that is more of a moral, I would call it soft halacha issue. We are not going to discuss this today. This is not going to be our topic today. That's another whole shiur. Are you allowed to bring a baby into the world from a single mother through artificial insemination? We're not discussing that, no. Next thing we could talk about. Well, let's say you do this process. Does the child that is created through artificial insemination, does he have a father? Halachically, is the donor called a father?
The dead one or the live one?
You could add, very good Shammai. This you could further compartmentalize. You could ask, if it's a live donor, is he called a father? In this case, even worse, it's a dead donor. Could you have a child after you're dead? That's a great question. Could you not have a child? Can you conceive a child? Right? That's the question, right? This is a major league question, because if we want to know if that baby that's born has a father, will he get the Yerusha? What about a Yibum situation?
Before he's born,
Let's say the soldier was killed, never had any children, was married, but then there was this after post-mortem child born. Is it considered the soldier had a child? If it is, there's no Yibum. If it isn't, there's Yibum, right? We are not discussing this Shiloh today.
Applicable here because he wasn't married to her.
Yes, correct. We are not discussing this Shiloh today, no. When you deal with AI, artificial insemination, you have many Shilohs, many Shilohs. Is it mutter even between a couple that's married and they're having fertility problems? Major Shiloh. Most poskim say it's mutter. Most poskim say it's okay. Okay, but what about a couple that can't have a child because the man has a problem, so they're married, they're happily married. They want to take someone else's sperm and impregnate a married woman. Whoa. Is that mutter or not? A major Shiloh. Moshe Feinstein said, yes, it's mutter. A married couple, two people married, can take someone else's sperm, impregnate the wife, and it's okay, again, if the donor is a goy. A major Shiloh. When the Satmar Rebbe heard this, you could imagine, he was not a happy cowboy. When the Satmar Rebbe heard that Moshe Feinstein said you could have a married couple take a goy sperm and create a child. We are not discussing this Shiloh today. This is not what we are going to discuss today. There's Shilohs, let's say a similar Shiloh, let's say a married woman gets impregnated by someone else's sperm, but a Jew. Will the kid be called a mamzer? Usually when a married woman has a relationship with a strange man, the kid's a mamzer. But over here, he didn't have no relationship. Actually, they're right. That's exactly the point. Even Moshe said only a goy. With a Jew, he was hesitant. There was reasons. There are many, other reasons too. Many reasons too. But also, of course, other reasons. But we're not talking about this. What are we going to talk about today? Just today. And like the doctor said, we could talk about another question, because you could take an egg of one woman, a sperm of a man, and put it in another woman. That's called a surrogate mother. And then we have a whole question: who's the mother? The one who had the egg, the one who supplied the egg, or the one who held the baby, the one who held it for 9 months, or the one who gave birth to the baby? major shaila. You won't believe the literature on this situation. Who is the mother? We are not discussing this today either, but we will, Emir Hashem, discuss one day some of this stuff. So what are we going to discuss today? What are we going to discuss today?
We're not discussing.
We're discussing today, l'choira, how the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says famously that a mace is aser b'hana. You cannot have hana from a mace. The Gemara says, how do you know a mace is aser b'hana? You can't use the body of a dead person for any hana. The Gemara says, because it says, by Miriam, v'atamas shab Miriam. And we make Xeris Shava to Egla Rufa. Because it says by Egla Rufa, v'orpu sham esa Egla benachal. And the Gemara says, and how do you know Egla Rufa is aser b'hana? Well, the Gemara says, because Egla Rufa is called kapara, Egla Rufa is called kachim. So it says openly, Xeris Shava, Egla Rufa is aser b'hana, and a mace is aser b'hana. This open shut. No, if a mace is aser b'hana, seemingly our soldier, whoever it is, dead. You're taking out a part of his body, using it to create a child. The mother's going to have enough. She wants a child. Seemingly, you can't do this because a mace is aser b'hana.
Who would give permission?
It's another. That's more of a legal issue.
First, before he dies, he just writes over.
But by the way, this is happening. This is not like this is in many armies. Like the times of David, they used to give a get before they would go out to war. And nowadays, there are many modern armies that offer the soldiers to donate, to put their sperm in a sperm bank, just in case they die. This is a very prevalent issue. So is that now that the case I just said is a little bit easier because he gave before he died. So let's not talk about that case. We're talking specifically about our case, our very specific case, where the person was already nifter, and then you're able to extract the sperm. If he gave it before, it makes it a lot more easier, because then it's not aser b'hana, it's not coming from a dead person. Only someone dead is aser b'hana. So
You're not damaging the body.
that gets in. A lot of places would say yes, because since the purpose is to have a child, a lot of places would say no, but a lot of places would say yes. What? And also how you do it. I don't want to get there. I'm not going there. But there is what to be about there.
It's also b'hana, it's the body. For example, if you have to fill up a hole, when I was doing, let's say Chevra Kadisha, you have to fill up a hole. You cut the hair of the mace, you put it in a hole, you're gaining benefit from it.
Oh!
It's not the body. The body is also b'hana.
Excellent.
The sperm is not us.
So the Gemara says the hair is aser b'hana. So we'll talk exactly about what the rabbi mentioned. So basically, what we're trying to do here is figure out how are we going to get around the problem of aser b'hana. So before we do that, let's understand, why is a mace aser b'hana? What is the reason?
How about a mace?
Excellent. You hear what Shammai said? Shammai says what I would have said. Well, it's very disrespectful to use a dead person. Have benefit of dead person. You might take advantage of the dead guy. He really can't protect himself. It's covered hames, bezayin hames. If that is the correct understanding, then certainly we could say that if the mess gave permission, like prior to his death, or we know for sure the mess would want this to happen, there would be no problem. It's no. Because if the whole reason is because they don't want to disrespect the dead person, it's disrespectful. But if we know his wishes would be that yes, he does want this benefit derived from him, so what's the problem? But the consensus of most of the places that Isser Hana of mess has nothing to do with Kavod HaMes and Bezayin HaMes and Nivla HaMes. Meaning, we're going to explain what each of these things are. Rabbi Yosef Engel, famous Rabbi Yosef Engel, talks about why is it that a goy body is not aser b'hana, according to many poskim, which is a great leniency to rely on it's much easier to get a transplant from a guy's body than from a Jew's body. Because a guy, according to many, many poskim, his body is not Aservana. Why not? Basically, what's the source? It says about Thomas Shah Miriam. Miriam was Jewish. So the only source of the body is Aservana is by a Jew. But Rabbi Yosef Engels explained, why is it so? Why is it so? So he says, it's very simple. He says, the Isser Hana, the lashon he employs is something called Tiyuv. He says a Jew is so holy, has so much potential when he's alive, and so Kaddish, that when the neshama leaves, there's such a void created that we don't want to associate with that void. We don't want to have any Hana from that article that's left there, because as great as the potential was, or as great as the Kedusha was prior to death, that is how degraded it is after its death. And from here is the difference between a goy and a Jew. A goy, I wouldn't say nothing changed, but his neshama is on a lower level, so we don't really, we're not adverse to partaking hana benefit from his body. But a Jew without a neshama, his body is considered, it's been degraded at such a low level from what it was. So that's called tiyuv. That's his lashon. If you learn that way, that's your understanding. It has absolutely nothing to do with kavod hames, nothing to do with bezoyin hames. It's something subjective. It's a subjective reality. Objective. It's an objective reality. This is Aservana, like chametz aser Pesach, or clay karen. You can't be Michael clay karen. I'm Michael. I want clay karen to be mutter bana. What does that mean? It's Aservana. Orla. It doesn't think as it's an objective reality. A mess. It's objective reality. Aservana. So says the Rabbi Yosef Engel, and that is so there's no concept of being Michael, of the dead person saying, I'm Michael, or it's okay, I want you to do it for my benefit, you can have enough for my body. It's subjective. And so says the Igris. Exactly. So says the Igris Moshe from a letter to the famous Moshe Sher. Moshe Sher was the head of the Aguda, very, very, very influential community leader. The great book from our school on him. And Reb Sher asked Reb Moshe that, are you allowed to use a person who said, I want to donate my body for medicine, for medical research? So the guy gave his okay, dead guy wrote down, on the back of the license, he writes down, yes, I want my body to be donated to medical research. Is that okay? Says Rav Moshe, according to the Torah, ish mi pi ish ad Moshe Rabbeinu, a transmission from generation to generation from Moshe Rabbeinu. You are not an owner of your body, and certainly the relatives don't own the body, and therefore you cannot. First of all, he's saying you cannot allow yourself to be mutilated or to your own, that type of bizayin on that type of level. And then he says, and by the way, it's irrelevant because it's Aser Bahana. He says it's irrelevant. Even if you want to say, well, maybe since it's a bizayin of the mace, so he could forego that. He could say, no, it's okay, I don't care if you mutilate me. I don't care if you don't treat me right. Even if you want to say that. But it's Aser Bahana. And therefore, it's Aser Bahana. It's just an objective reality. So, and therefore, Ramesh says it's Aser. What? I did not say that. I did not say that. I said heart and liver and kidneys right there. The doctor will tell you. You could actually do a kidney after brain even when it's totally dead. But they usually don't do it. They usually do it when it's brain dead. So, but we're going to talk about skin grafts, cornea grafts. That's what we're talking about. Or is this?
What was the Moshe's question specifically?
He was talking about a body for medical research. A whole body to be used for medical research, for autopsies, for not an organ. You're a medical student. You got to see a body, right? So they have cadavers. They're called cadavers, right? So let's get this straight. What are we doing here? We're asking how could we use this sperm of the dead person? It's aser behana. Now, just to get things clear, it is correct what Shammai said. There is other issues when you deal with dead people. Besides the Isser Hana, you benefiting from the dead person. There's the issue of Bizayin Hames. There's the issue of you have to bury the dead person. There's the issue of not mutilating the dead person. Here, where do we know that from? It's an open pasuk in the Chumash. It's an open pasuk in the Chumash. It talks there about someone who is actually executed by Bezdin. And it says over there, it says when you kill someone, Loi Solin Nivlos Eles Ki Covered Tikbrana Bayim. Open pasuk. Do not allow his body just to hang around there. No, take it down right away and bury him. From Loi Solin we learn you have to treat the dead person with respect. And Ki Covered Tikbrana we learn that you have to bury a dead person. Right? So it's open psukim about Bezayin Ames. But this has nothing to do with Isra no. Now, let me bring it to the fore. For example, the Tshuvas Rashba brings down, and it's open Gemaras. Let's say a person was buried not in his family plot. For whatever reason, he wasn't able to be moved right away to his allotted family plot. They wanted to know if they could put, the Tshuvas Rashba talks about a sid, some type of acid or something on the body, right? But they knew they were burying it in the wrong place. But they knew they had to move him. And they know that the dead person wants to be buried in the other place. Could they artificially cause the body to
Not decompose.
decompose quicker? To decompose quicker. So you say, wow, you're going to put basically acid on the body to make it decompose quicker? That sounds nasty. The Rash said, yes, of course you can. Of course. Why? Because even though the problem of covered hames, bezayin hames, nivel hames, nivel maze means to be mutilated, but over here you're doing it for his benefit. So because he wants to be moved over there. Because they couldn't move it, they would bury it, and they wanted to move it a couple days later. And if it didn't decompose quickly, they couldn't move it. Rashbek says the whole thing would just dissipate, the whole body. It's very graphic there, what he says. It would not be an easy ride. So if the body was more decomposed, it would be easier to transfer it. So the Rashba and the Tshuva says, no problem. So we're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? The answer is very simple. There's two different things. Here, you're not having hana from the mess. Are you having enough from the mess? No. You're mistreating the mess. No, not called mistreating. You're doing it for the mess's benefit. Since you're doing it for the mess's benefit, there's no problem. Because the mess wanted to be able to be moved quick. Because he didn't want to be buried. He didn't want to be buried here. That's called the benefit for the mess. Just like same thing we know, you're supposed to bury the same day. But if relatives are not here, we wait a couple of days for the relatives to get in. The guy's not alive. That is called for the benefit of the mess.
The worms don't eat him. He doesn't have kapora. That's spiritual.
So anything that we do, the Floyd HaMes, basically counteracts Nivel HaMes or Bezayin HaMes. Why? Because those things are related to, like Shammai said, we want to do things, we want to treat the mess the best way possible. Okay, but if it's better for him to decompose quicker, so we'll decompose him quicker. But Isser Hana has nothing to do with the mess.
So you're playing with a donation?
Isser Hana, and I'm trying to say Isser Hana has nothing to do with the mess. It's nothing to do with mistreating him. It has nothing to do with that. It's like we said, Klei Kerem, it's like Orla. It's just you can't have a nut from a mess. Hence, we're back to our problem. What is our problem? Seemingly, we cannot take the zera from the dead person and impregnate the woman because we're having a nut from the mess. So, we're going to try to find 4 heterim.
But it's better the mess because his
But we said it makes no difference. Didn't we say it makes no difference?
Yeah, but it makes a difference in when he wants to be moved.
Because there we're not using the body. We're just destroying the body. Over here you're using the body to create a child which the mother wants. The mother wants a child. That's seemingly, we'll talk about it in a minute, seemingly that's enough. Ask someone who doesn't have children. Do you want to have children? Yes, I do want to have children. So seemingly it's hana. It's seemingly you are appropriating or enjoying hana from the dead person. How? By creating your child, the woman having a child from that dead person. Yes, Josh.
Why can it override the Zion and the Hana?
We'll talk about that. That's exactly what we'll talk about. Meaning, the Isser Hana is the most formidable issue. Exactly what Josh said. The Isser Hana is the most formidable issue. How could you use the Zera? It's Asar Hana. Again, if the Zera was extracted before the guy died, no problem. No problem. No problem. The only problem is that this case with Omer Shachar was after. Oh. So heter number 1 is from Rav Unterman, the famous Rav Unterman. He says, mistake. Questions a mistake. Why not? You're taking the Zera from the dead person, you're having enough. But what happened to that Zera after you put in the woman? It becomes alive again. It becomes alive again. So you actually did not have enough from a dead person because it was resurrected. If you look at it microscopically, what happened? Yes, the Zera was from a dead person. That's true. But then what happened? It miraculously became alive again. So at the end of the day, the bottom line is, at the end of the day is, the thing that is giving you directly actually was revivified, resurrected, reset, right? So this is Rav Unterman's heter that it's not called having hana from a mace. That's true, but that's irrelevant. The 99% that you didn't use, so you didn't have enough from that. You're right, that you didn't have enough from that part. Right. Nothing happened to that part. You're only worried about the part that had enough from the parts that has enough from the 1%. Right. Okay, wow. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says, yeah, that's in Shiksa. We find that in Shas. We find things that are tamei, like truma that's tamei, and you plant it, and it regrows. It loses this tumah. So we find this concept that once something could be dead and then it becomes alive, right? Sounds like it sounds legitimate. There's only one problem. This is going to be a little bit complicated, but basically the problem is like this. There's a before and after. It is true at the end of the day, we may say at the end of the day, the hana is coming from something that is alive because the zera was resuscitated. But originally, it came from a dead object. From the zera was dead, per se, or the person was not alive. So, in a sense, it's liminal. It's something quasi. It started out when you started the process. It was dead. When you finished the process, it was alive. So it's like a quasi. It's not called having enough from a dead. It's not called having enough from
also, the
dead.
Could die. The fetus
Right.
could die. So, who says it's going to survive?
Then there's no problem. Then you had no. That's the same question here. Then you never had no. But let's leave it. So this is an interesting, and you'll be surprised. This has already been discussed. A very similar situation been discussed. We all know the concept called bittul. You take something and you put it in 60 times its amount, mutter, right? Can you take clay kerem and let's make believe it was 1 in 60. You take clay kerem and you put it into a mixture 60 times its amount. Oh! So there's a concept called ein mevatlin ismachila. At the end result, it is true, there's no Isser Hana, but when it started, there was Isser Hana. And Shlomo Zalman goes through by things that are Aser ba'achila only, for example. So, there are things that are Aser ba'achila, and there are things that are Aser ba'hana. Two separate things, right? Chazer is only Aser ba'achila. Clay kerem, orla, chametz, basar b'cholov, those are things that are aser b'hana. So even if, I don't want to get too involved, that if you're allowed to take chazer, and you are allowed to put it in 60 times, even if that would be the truth, that you could be mevatel isser lechatchila by achila, because why not? What's the problem? I put it in, I know it's chazer, but I put it now 60 times the amount. even if that's true, but everyone agrees by Isra Hana, you can't do it. What's the difference? Very simple. Isra Achila, the Chazer, big deal. I'm not have enough from the Chazer. I'm not have enough from the Chazer, I just can't eat it. So now I've turned it into something that's edible. But by Hana, says the Shlomo Zalman and many Achronim, Hana, it doesn't make a difference at the end of the day, it will technically be mutter b'hana. Because when you started the process, it was asr b'hana, and you're trying to derive hana in the beginning of the process that will have an end result, but you're using something that's asr b'hana, trying to turn it into mutter b'hana. That itself goes under the rubric of being asr b'hana. So, says Reb Shlomo Zalman, same thing here. You're right, at the end of the day, the zera will be alive. It'll be resurrected. It will be considered alive. But the process starts when it's dead. That's very similar to the concept of ein mevaten isser lechatchila isser hana. It's very similar to that scenario, a beginning and an end, and a process in between. So Rav Shlomo Zalman is hesitant. At the end of the day, he seems to agree to Rav Unterman, because he says it's a little bit different. What happens when you're mevatel isser? You put 1 into 60. It's still there. It's just it gets sort of diluted. It gets mitigated. So such a little amount, but it's still there. Over here, what happens? It's not dead anymore. That's there. It's not dead anymore. It's a total new reincarnation. So here, even Shlomo Zalman would say here, he seemingly says he would agree it's okay, even though the process starts from a dead thing. But if the end of the process, the thing is alive, it's not like bittul. Bittul, the thing becomes mutter, but it's still there. Right? You put chazer in 60-something, the chazer's still there. Over here, the thing that's dead is not dead anymore. So this is one possible heter. But many achronim, the Sri Eish goes ballistic. He is very unhappy with this heter, and he's like, no, that's ridiculous. The hana is coming from a dead person. It starts from a dead person, even after the zera is alive. But look at the whole picture. The zera came from a dead person, so it is called having hana from a dead person. But Rabbi Shlomo Zalman wants to use this very interesting, novel heter. Now, but again, it's questionable. Heter number 2, which I would have said. Well, they say, well, wait a minute. This, right, a dead person's asr b'hana, but is sperm part of the dead person? It's not like his arm. It's not like it's sort of like a fluid or something. I don't know exactly what it is. It's sort of detached. Yes, is that called a dead person?
It's like his blood, right?
Is it like his blood? Oh. So the truth is, there are 2 Gemaras about this. The Gemaras deal with hair. The Gemara wants to know, is hair called a dead person who dies? And then you're like, hey, I need a wig. Can you cut the hair of the dead person? Big machlokes. The consensus of the Shulchan Aruch is that hair is asr b'hana. Hair is considered part of the dead person. Now, the problem is, there is a most enigmatic Gemara in Chulin and in Nida that's pretty famous. The Gemara says like this: skin, the Gemara is not too sure if it's tummy, just skin alone of a dead person, it's a tummy. So the Gemara says, you know what? You know what the Gemara says? We're going to make it, whether it's hamachlokes, the Gemara says, we're going to make it tummy no matter what. Why? Why do we want to make skin tummy no matter what?
Touch it.
The Gemara says a gzeira. What's the gzeira? You're holding on? We're afraid someone's going to flay his father and mother and turn it into a carpet.
I was thinking of that.
Again, let's say that again. We want to make skins tummy. Why do we want to make skins tummy? Again, it's a question if it's tummy or not. Because if we make it tummy, that would cause that people will not take their parents' bodies and turn it into doormats. Now, I think this family needs to go to therapy. That's what I think. But be it as it may. all the Rishonim here say, what? How in the world, forget about the societal issues, how in the world are you allowed to take the skin of a dead person and make it into a doormat? Didn't we say a person is Aser B'Hana? Didn't we say a person is Aser B'Hana? So what does that mean? What is that supposed to mean? So there's a lot of debate about this. Some want to say, no, a skin is not Aser B'Hana. But the Rashba said, how could it be hair is Aser B'Hana? What would you think is more integral part of a person, hair or skin? I mean, I don't know, skin obviously doesn't mean the little, it means some layer, a skin deep layer, you know, the upper epidermis, I presume. How in the world, and Tosfos says, Tachrichin is Aser B'Hana, shrouds are Aser B'Hana. How in the world is it possible skin is Mutar B'Hana and shrouds are Aser B'Hana? But there is a school of thought that skin is Mutar B'Hana, and they try to work out of these problems. Okay, but let's say you go with, no, hair is Aser B'Hana, skin is Aser B'Hana, so what's going on in this Gemara? What's going on in this Gemara? So the Gemara, they give 3 terutzim.
Excessive skin.
One teretz is, we're talking, the Gzer was by a ger whose father is a guy, and a guy's father is Mutar B'Hana, because he's a guy, we said. So the whole Gzera was in a case where the father was a guy, and we're afraid you're going to make the Gemara, the Chum didn't want a ger to make his father, who's a guy, into a doormat. Of course, most Shem say that's a wacky. That is like the weirdest case in the world, and it doesn't make sense. We should make a gzeira in that case.
What?
But I'm sure you already remember from the Gemara, Baba Kama, Tyson Daf Yud and Baba Kama does say this, that a ger is Mutar B'Hana. So they give the teretz that was given that basically accepted. That's right. We know the truth is it's wrong to use your parents as a doormat, and it's Aser B'Hana. It's Aser B'Hana. But you know what? We have a famous story in Yuma. What was the famous story in Yuma? There was a race. In order to partake in who would have part of the service, they would use the race up the ramp, and whichever clade won the race, right? Right? So they were in shape over there in the Beis Hamikdash. Whichever clade won the race, he would get to do the Trumas Hadeshin. He would get to do the service. Sure enough, one of the Kayanim were losing. He was a sore loser, and he stabbed his competitor. And the father of the stabbed kid, you figured he'd be broken up, says, "Oh, don't worry. The kid's still alive. We could take out the knife, and the knife won't become tummy." Right? And the Gemara makes a note there that in those days they were a little bit warped. We find that in religious people sometimes, that they're a little bit warped. And they put more of an emphasis on tumah than on killing. They were more worried about the problem of tameh. It's on the bed. That's right. So he's right. So it's on the bed. Then the issue of murder. We find 2 or 3 Gemaras like this. So the Gemara, the Rishonim answer over here. You're right. This that they were using the mat, the parents of the mat, it was wrong. Aser B'Hana, but that wasn't enough to be an impediment. They had to put on also Isser Tumah. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is, it seems, if we're going to say that hair is Aser B'Hana, and we're going to say the skin is Aser B'Hana, and this Gemara is sort of like an outlier, so we could really have a strong side and say that sperm is considered part of the body. Right? You'd have to. Here, I would be hesitant. I saw some say, no, hair yes, skin yes, sperm that's something separate. That's not called part of the dead person. But many say no. Once we see hair and we see nails and we see skin, that's it. We'll say this will also be Aser B'Hana. Now, me personally, I just have my own personal story. If you could take the sperm and inject it into the woman, obviously the sperm is alive still. It's a very interesting question over here. The person died. He's not breathing, his heart's not beating. but obviously the sperm's still alive, or else it wouldn't be working, right? Dead sperm ain't gonna impregnate anyone.
It's a cell. It's life.
Right, it is alive. So I would have said, I didn't see anyone say this. I didn't see anyone say this. I would say, yes, the person's dead, but his sperm is alive. So it's just not considered have enough of a dead person. But clearly, everyone else, all the Achreidim who don't, I didn't see anyone mention this, they clearly hold not that way. They hold that once the person's dead, his entirety is dead, even the sperm. Okay, now, it's getting late. Heter 3. Maybe heter. What's the heter 3? Well, the Ritbaz, the famous of Dab Ben Zimri, talks about a question. His question was, no, he lived by the Beis Yosef's time. Can you eat mummies?
What?
Yes, right. Can you eat mummies?
He lived in Egypt.
And he writes here, I kid you not, this is a lot of Torah literature about this. Says, he says that it's very prevalent that people would eat mummies for refuah, even though it's not a sakana. They would eat mummies, and people also used to make business out of these mummies. And he says, I don't understand. Isn't it aservana? Isn't dead people aservana? So how are you allowed to eat the mummies?
They say mommy's still alive.
Right? So you always thought the zombies eat the people. No, it's the other way. The people are the ones that are eating the mummies. So the Ritbaz says, no problem. Why no problem? Because even though we know something is aservana, you can't have a no, but the Gemara famously says, if it's shaloi kederech hanasai, if it's not the normal way of having a no, then it is mutter. Right? That's a famous Gemara in Psachim. The Gemara in Psachim says clearly by chaylev chai, if you just drink straight up fat, or it talks about using fat from a shar nisko. We learned Baba Kama. We know shar nisko is aser b'hana. And if you use it if it has an ointment of some sort, no problem. If it's shaloi kederech hanasai, it's no problem. So says the Ritbaz, no problem. It's not very normal to eat mummies, and he gets involved. Even though it may be normal to eat people if you're a cannibal, but once you're in the mummy stage, that's really not too normal. So yes, you're eating the mummy, it's a dead person. A dead person is aser b'hana, but it's shaloi kederech hanasai, and even though shaloi kederech hanasai is aser midrabanan, but for refuah we could make a heter. Wait.
We don't mummify.
So that's he said. Go ahead if you guys want to, talk to parents about the menu. Kind of get the mummy on the menu over there, and go for it. But says the Ritbaz that the mummy is shaloi kederech hanasai. It's not so tasty. It's not normal. Fine. So there was mutter. Then the Ritbaz says what the doctor said. And by the way, these mummies are all goyim. So goyim are not aservana anyway. So it's okay. Don't worry about it. Now, it's not so clear. We paskin pashas of goyim is mutter bana. Good. So let's take that heter. Is it normal? This is going to be a question by all organs. Is it normal to do a skin grab? Is it called derech hanasai to skin grab? Well, or cornea, cornea transplant. They take a little bit of the eye and put.
Transfusion.
It's not dead. It's not a problem. We're not talking about life. We're not talking about. You're allowed to do a kidney.
No, except
a kidney donation.
Person just died in a car accident.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's the same problem. All these are the same problem. Is it called like kederech hanasai? So here, a lot of literature. Some Achrayim want to say that's kederech hanasai. There was skin on the dead person, and now you put in the live person. It's the same function. There was a cornea in the dead person, and now you put in the live person. It's the same function. And some Achrayim say, yeah, it's normal to the cornea was meant for Mr. A. The cornea was not meant for Mr. B. That's called shaloi kederech hanasai. Our shaila, it's a little bit iffy. Because in our shaila, it's a little bit funny how you got the zera to the woman from the dead guy, But that's the way it's always done.
Yeah, it's always meant to be.
It's always done that way. So our shaila is not so clear if we could say this is called having hana shaloi kederech hanasai. It's weird. It's definitely weird. But is it shaloi kederech hanasai?
Yeah, it's not a natural way.
Okay, but the issue is of having a child. And bottom line is, this is the usual way that
Woman
you.
has hana from that child. A man is dead. You can't have hana when
No,
he's dead.
right, we're not worried about the man. We're not worried about the man. That's what we're worried. We're worried about the woman. That's exactly the problem. We're worried about the woman having a no. It's exactly what we're worried about. But truth is that Moshe Feinstein has a whole 3-4 pages about this, about organ transplants, and they're called yes hana, derech hanasai, not derech hanasai, but he says it's irrelevant. Because Rabbi Kiva Eger and many Achronim argue on their Baz, and they say you can't eat mummies because mace is also even not kederech hanasai.
Isn't it kosher?
Now, it would take me at least an hour to explain to you this machlokes. Why is it that the Ritbaz and many Achronim hold mace is mutter b'hana if it's shaloi kederech hanasai, and Rabbi Kiva Eger in Shulchan Aruch, straight up in Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Kiva Eger says, don't eat mummies. No good, because mace is also even shaloi kederech hanasai. So this heter, according to Moshe, doesn't exist. Because even if you want to say extracting the zera is shaloi kederech hanasai, it's according to Moshe, it's not no heter. Okay. Last, the fourth heter, we'll end with this basically. The fourth heter will be, well, it's pachas mikazayis. You're right. You can't have a no from the dead person. The zera is considered part of the person, and none of this resurrecting business, none of that. It's us about no, but it's less than a kazayas. So it's less than a kazayas, no problem. Since it's less than a kazayas, there's not going to be a problem.
But a dover chashiv less than kazayas has kashivas too.
That's something else. That's for bittul. That's for bittul. That's correct for bittul, but not for this. This is brought down by who? The famous Reb Tzvi Frank in his famous Sefer Har Tzvi. Reb Tzvi Frank says he's talking about cornea transplant. That's what he's talking about. It's all very similar here. Cornea, skin grafts. They all the basic shiloh. They may change a little bit. He says you could do a cornea transplant. You're taking the cornea from the dead guy. How are you doing that? No, but the cornea is teeny, less than a kazayas. No problem. No, the Chatchila says you could do cornea transplant. That's what I'm talking about. He's saying you could do a cornea transplant.
But isn't less than Kazaya only, that doesn't mean it's the Chatchila.
Oh, so Josh is way ahead of the game. Josh knows there's a concept called Chatzi Shir Osam in Torah. We know that Kazayas is when you get the Malkis and you get the big onish, but we know Chatzi Shir is Osam in Torah. So obviously Reb Tzvi Frank knew about this too. And he says, which is a major big machlokes, that Chatzi Shir Asam Torah is only if it's possible that it can lead to the whole shir. Meaning, you're eating a Chatzi Kazayas of Chazer. Very bad. It's also why? Because you may end up eating the whole Kazayas. But over here by cornea, you took a teeny cornea. What are you going to do? Take another cornea? What are you going to do? No more cornea. You don't need it. So that's called in the parlance of Chazi Listerufe. Chatzi Shir Asam Torah only if it's called Chazi Listerufe, meaning you're able to add on to the half of Kazayas, and we're afraid you may actually get to the Kazayas. But this is a big machlokes. A lot of Chaim disagree with that, and they hold it has nothing to do with that. Chatzi Shir don't. So, basically, 4 Terim. Why we could take there out of the person who's already dead and pregnant the wife. 1. It's not Aservana because at the end of the day it's resuscitated, it's resurrected, so it's not called having enough from the dead. 2. What was 2? 2. Oh, maybe it's not part of the person, and maybe like I said, it's not that part's not dead. 3. What was 3? Shloi k'derech hanasai. Just like you can eat a mummy. So it's not called the derech hana. Yes, it's Aservana, but it's not derech hana the way you're using the dead person. And 4, chatzi kazayas. It's less than a kazayas. Reb Tzvi Frank, I can't get involved. He's not too sure if the barometer is kazayas or shavapruta. We usually talk about kazayas when it's Isser Achila. When we talk about Isser Hana, we don't talk about a kazayas. You can't have Hana from this Hegdish wood. Oh, how much? Kazayas? That's what you say, kazayas? Or you say Shal Pruta. So this would take a shear on its own to analyze what would be the shears that we would employ for the zera. Would it be kazayas and kazayas, or less than a shal pruta, more than a shal pruta? It's a whole huge discussion. I can't tell you. It's based on a lot of things. You could assume the zera is worth more than a shal pruta. It's a lot of money. Go to these sperm banks; it ain't cheap, right? So it's not so clear. It gets basically we have 4 term. All of them are quasi. I guess if you put the whole 4 together, one of them probably right. So we're going to allow you to impregnate the woman. But we have just talked about one issue. The issue of, Shaman, this is your question, of the Isser Hana issue. But wait a minute. What about Bezayin HaMeis? What about the Zera had to have Kfura? What about you mutilating the dead person? What about all that? So we've used 4 ways to deal with the issue of the Isser Hana, which we again said was an objective reality. But what about the other things? You're mutilating the body, kfura. You will never bury the zera. You will never bury it. Bezayin HaMeis, right? So here, you think it's like a minor thing. There's so much literature about this. A binyan sion. We could say over here, it's late. Maybe we could say what Shammai said. The dead guy probably wants to have a child. Probably he would want to have a child. So hence, since he would want, we could, do some type of procedure to take out the zera, and it's not called bezoyin because he would want. Because we said, if you remember getting the shear, we said when it comes to bezoyin and nivel hames, if it's for the benefit of the dead person, then you're allowed to do it. But this is so questionable. Who said the dead person wants a kid? Who said it's good to be born? The Gemara says that it's not it's very good. But to make life, it is possible. But when it comes to skin graft, or it comes to cornea, it's a major issue. How can you take the cornea of a dead person? Okay, it's less than a kazai. It's fine. It's whatever. It's not derech hanasai. But you're mutilating, and you can't say by me taking his cornea is helping him. If I create a child, fine. It's his child. What? You want to have children. Trust me, you want to have children. When you leave this world, you want to have children. It's called posterity. That's the word I use there. No, that's true.
It's like tattoos.
Rabbi Moshe said that's true. You just can't say, oh, I want my body to be used for medical research. But this is something very, very objective. People want to have kids. People want to have their relatives come to the levaya. So therefore, you postpone the levaya. There are some things that are objective realities that are good. Hence, I'm not saying it's clear. It's not simple. But it could be that a lot of places say that it's okay in the strict halacha. There's no Isser Hana, and we can get around nivel and bezayin hames because it would be for the benefit. It's something not only he wants, it's not only something he wants. It is considered an objective. Yes, it's an objective benefit. He has kids.
He doesn't.
Well, he has biological kids. You're right. Josh is right that it could be. You don't want to have kids, Josh?
I do.
So I also do. So that's a benefit.
Every mixer, it's a
What?
After they're dead, there's no benefit. It's not fair.
You only want kids to.
No. His kid's going to
Josh, trust me. Everyone wants to have their name. Now, you don't want to have kids just that.
He's not having kids.
You don't want to. Wait a minute. I'm not sure what your time is. You don't want to have kids just so that your kids can take care of you when you're old. That's not the only reason why you want kids. You want kids because when you leave this world, you have a posterity. You have a perpetuity. You have a continuation.
Even sure that it is his kid. It's a million reasons.
It's his kid biologically. That's for sure. Biologically, for sure, it's his kid. You want to know halachically? You're right. You're right. Josh may be right. If you decide that it's not his kid, then you're right.
He is also his kid.
It's not clear. Rav Moshe Sternberg said it's not his kid halachically. a dead person can't have a kid. So then you may be right. But Rabbi say we have to stop here. In Mitzvah Hashem, we'll talk more about this another time about because skin graft and cornea is a lot heftier problem. There, l'chayra, you would need that at least he should give us Haskama before. At least that may help. That may help if he gives us Haskama before. May help. Because then we can say, well, it's a quasi mitzvah. It may help. But over here, we could say even if there was no Haskama before, we could say that. So we avoided the problem of Isra Na. We avoided the problem of Bezayin Amaze, Kibbut Amaze, Kfura is also we'd have to employ. Well, it's resurrected again, so we don't got to bury it, or it's less than a kazayis. That's for sure. Less than kazayis works. You don't need to do Kfura less than a kazayis. Rabbi say.